Spoiler warning for Heart of Ganymede. Further warnings will be given, but ideally you'd be advised to play the game for your own good. The link's in the description. Content warning for the following topics: gore and body horror, spelunkophobia or fear of caves, dead bodies, strange cephalopods, centipede-looking snakes, skeletons, and big lizards. Probably 20 feet tall. I don't know. Epilepsy warning. At some point Heart of Ganymede has flashing lights, and it definitely has jump scares, so be careful. I like video games. I like playing video games, I like making video games, I like analyzing video games. Overall, I love games. Recently, a friend of mine worked on a game called Heart of Ganymede for Fisnum's Toxic Terror Jam.
You could have at least cosplayed a job application!
It's a sit and survive horror game where you have to juggle cables around to deal with horrifying and adorable creatures. And honestly, I loved nearly every single minute I played it. The gameplay was tight, yet fair. The environment and sound design frightened me, even while nothing happened. The story had me wondering and theorizing the deeper I went. Having an affinity for game dev myself, I couldn't help but wonder why. What about the game is so incredibly enticing? How did the Lunaros team create such a masterpiece, let alone in 1 month? This is what I want to find out today, so follow me as I plunge into the heart of Ganymede. You play as Gabby, a mechanic working for Nebulon Corp on the planet Ganymede. Chaos has ensnared the worksite, as a sharp spike in moonquakes has fractured much of the facility. Your wife, Alice, is trapped far below the surface in the breeding labs. Save her and everyone trapped inside. Loading into the game, you find yourself in an elevator with an assortment of utilities. Right now, the most important things are the navigation console, the breaker box, and the floodlight right in the middle of the cage. Now, by themselves, they're kinda useless. The glue that holds them together is the humble cable. A wire with 2 pink plugs that you can put in any socket. Of course, you can't just plug the nav into the floodlight and expect it to do anything. You need power to run things. This is what the generator is for. Naturally, having things plugged into the generator means you'll drain power from a very limited pool. To remedy this, you can use a hand crank. You insert it into the spring locks and wait, that's the wrong game. To crank the generator, you hold your use key and move the mouse back and forth. You need to keep a rhythm though, which I'm thankful for because it stops you from speedrunning Carpal Tunnel, and it makes a good fidget toy. As you descend into the guts of the moon, you will run into this thing. The Nautilus. This is what you could call the standard enemy. It floats around, inches closer, moves further, and eventually chokes you to death with its suspiciously human-looking hands. You deal with it by shining the light on it.
Give me your money!
The keen amongst you, however, will notice that when you unplug the navigation console, the lights will start to flicker and the elevator will start to creak. This is a subtle way to tell the player that they shouldn't leave the nav unplugged. The lights are out. Thankfully, this is what the breakers are for. Just switch them back up and crank that generator. After a couple minutes, you arrive at Station A2. This is where you'll first see the map. It's a square grid consisting of 9 stations, named after their depth and their order from left to right. A2, logically, is the top middle station. Alice tells us to go left to A1 and then down through B1 in order to arrive where all the scientists are at C1. At this point you might be asking, wait, an elevator going sideways, how does that work? Well, rails of course. Sideways elevators are a thing in real life. They're pretty neat. As you make your way to A1, you'll find your second enemy, the skin centipede, the basilisk. These things walk on air and skitter closer to you, sometimes getting on top of the elevator. You deal with them the same way as the Nautili, by flashing them. No, not like that. Well, wait. Can I talk about the ambience? Because holy hell did they do a good job with it. You're surrounded by darkness. You have enough light to see everything inside the elevator, but it's nearly impossible to distinguish anything outside of it. You can barely see the walls on two sides, and the other two are submerged in such deep darkness that not even the giant floodlight can cut through it, making even the calmest of moments feel tense. All of which makes it even more frightening when you do see the faintest bit of red in the dark. Ah, we made it to A1. There's just one problem though. The path down is blocked. That's not to say the trip was in vain, however. Gabby mentions there's only one cable and that there's a missing switch. According to Alice, this is
Really bad.
without the switch you can't activate the shock cage. Don't think much about why the elevator has a shock cage. Just stay with me here. Don't think about it. Look, the elevator door is open. Let's see what's in there. The first thing you can find is clipboards with notes. Most of these are logs from the science team. Let me read them out for you. Politicus Nautilus. Date August 12th, 609. Its shell is composed of a hard, chitinous material, along with some magnetic material. Nautilus can float easily and using their appendages to course correct. They are very intriguing creatures. We've shipped off a piece of a Nautilus shell to conduct further research on how we could utilize this material. Most of the team has been very busy studying the Nautilus. However, I've been occupied trying to figure out how such a creature came to be. How could a cephalopod with such strong human connections end up on a dead moon? Thriving nonetheless. Carnivora basiliscus. The basilisk. Date October 18, 609. Bioluminescent tendrils cover its fleshy body. When alone they appear flaccid. However, when in the presence of another basilisk, the tendrils stand up and begin to move around. We believe that they use their tendrils to communicate with each other. Avoid at all costs. If you encounter a basilisk, scare it with Nebulon's portable flood lamp that must be kept on you at all times. Alice's observation, they're really cute, but the rest of the team doesn't think so. Oh well, I'm getting a bit tired of working in the dark though. Hopefully we can figure out a way to study it in a bit of a brighter environment. The scientists at Nebulon have been investigating the life forms that are present on the moon, also called womb spawn, and speculating about their origin. Notably, their DNA also carries great similarities to human DNA, and they do have human features. I wonder what that means. A1 also has a very important tool, the blue cable. It's a cable denoted by its blue plugs and the fact that it keeps falling for those elongate your wire with 3 simple steps advertisements. Thankfully, it's long enough to comfortably reach the floodlight. With this cable, all of our cable management problems are solved. We don't need to decide whether to plug the nav or the light. We can have both at all times, and nothing will ever stop us. Wait, what's the sound?
I have a joke for you. What is a skeleton's favorite snack?
This is Terry, named after how terribly disfigured your face will be when he catches you. He's a skeleton puppeteered by a bunch of fleshy worms. Kinda like RFK Jr. with the Kennedy head curse, or J.K. Rowling with her wall mold. On your trip back to A2, you get to experience the luxury of not having to disconnect anything. But once you start going to A3, he will loudly run at you from behind. He's blind, so the floodlight won't do anything. Then how do you deal with him? Simple. This is where another tool becomes important, the speakers. See, Terry is very proud of the loudness of his footsteps. So you need to use the speakers to loudmouth his ass. Excuse me, I'm trying to record in here! Anyway. This is also where you have to become proficient in cable management. As I mentioned, the A1 A2 trip didn't require you to do anything with the cables, and that's intentional. Not only do you get more acquainted with the concept of having two cables, but you also get to grow more comfortable. Just flash here, flash there, and everything's good. Then A2 A3 comes in to get you more acquainted with the concept of having only two cables. Why? Because when you use the speaker, it locks whichever plug you had it in for however long it takes for it to shut the fuck. So if something appears right as you start dealing with him, you end up having to use a pink cable for the spotlight. This is foreshadowing for a mistake I would often make later in the game. I do have to give the devs props though. As much as I joked about it, the speakers aren't actually loud for the player. The alarm they play was made to give you the idea of loudness without actually breaking your eardrums. Speaking of sound, as you play through the game, you may notice certain noises and sound bits playing around you. Pebbles falling, a distant telephone, metallic creaks, ominous wind, a distant roaring. These are what's called red herrings. They don't mean anything gameplay wise, but they still catch you off guard. This was inspired by FNAF 1's use of them as a tool to build its atmosphere, and I think the team at Loneros did a really good job with them. As you arrive at A3, Gabby mentions that the elevator can in fact go down from here. This is a subtle way to remind the players that the game is not strictly linear, and the only thing stopping you from going to different places is the state of the tunnels between them. It was also annoying the devs because playtesters just did not even think that it was a case. Getting off at the station, you find a switch for the shock gauge. I guess it's time for you to know. There's one creature amongst the womb spawn that's very unique. A massive being capable of swallowing you whole. You've actually heard her before while moving around the place. Her name is Lizzie. She's a huge lizard-shaped creature, although with notably mammal skin. Her current state is the result of a prospective military contract, combined with financial neglect from the higher-ups. She has a light of her own, so the floodlight won't work on her. And she absolutely loudmouths your puny speakers. So none of the tools you've used so far will do anything to her. Now you may ask, what about the shock gauge? Well, you're on the right track, that's for her. That being said, Liz is a smart cookie, and she'll wait on the roof of the elevator before attacking. You have to let her come down to you before you activate the shock gauge. But don't do it for too long, or else you'll hurt Lizzie too much. And you don't want to hurt Lizzie too much. She won't do anything special about it, but it's just... please don't hurt her. Please. Oh, and also, if you hold the switch on for too long, it's gonna trip the breakers. Naturally, sending 5 trillion volts through a cage to the point where it glows blue is also going to drain power. So keep that in mind before returning to your usual sweep routine. I need to reiterate my previous warning. There are spoilers. Seriously, if you want to experience it blind, go play the game. You can go back to A2, but personally I decided to move down to B3. There you can pick up the key to B1 storage and read a note about Lizzie. The creature sputtered an eye and has begun trying to talk with us. Its speech heightens when frightened, which we learn after one of the researchers shocked himself while testing the conductive properties of the Nautilus shell. Her name is Elizabeth. I love her. She only seems to like female researchers though. Don't know what that's about, but I'm glad I count as one. Makes me feel a bit better about myself. Thank you, Lizzie. This tells us two things. 1. Lizzie is able to understand language. And 2. Alice is trans, and Lizzie is the best ally you could ever have. Like, she could probably just rip out anyone who tries to hate crime you. both of these things will be very relevant later. From that point onwards, you can only go back up to level A and then down to B2. Upon arrival, you'll notice two things. For one, there's no door to enter. There's a passageway, but it's a dead end. And for another, something very wrong happened to Alice.
Hey Alice, you there? Alice? Alice?
Oh, hey Gabina, how you doing?
Girl, are you okay? What are you on right now?
What? The shielding is down. Her and I've never seen her up close before. She's so wonderful.
And it gets worse. While you were listening to Alice getting high off on moon rocks, I went ahead and drove over to B1. Using the key, you open a door and find a note from her, which is cute but also kinda sad. And a key to the C3 power room. Seems like our search is not over yet. More importantly, however, there is a note that contains logs about the Nautilus. Politicus Nautilus. Date 08-29-609. Alice noted that the Nautilus seemed to have feelings in their shallows. She's become well acquainted with our subject. Last year reported, the Nautilus reacted positively when receiving physical affection. Apparently you need a group of scientists to determine it. We've also discovered that the reason they can hover is due to magnetic material mixed within their shells. Scientists discovered that it reacts positively to being treated with affection. But what's more concerning is what happens next. Date 12-31-609. Experiments started with us mixing the womb flesh in with the soil and observing what would grow. On a moral level, most of us didn't like mashing a sentient being down and using its biomatter. But the researcher in us was fascinated by what we initially created. They grabbed this being that they managed to establish a level of affection with, ground it down into pieces and used it as fertilizer. They had more qualms about it, but their curiosity was stronger. And you know what they say about curiosity. Date 01-04-610. It's been a few days and we've already seen incredible results. A large bulb has sprouted from the soil. This is genuinely one of my favorite notes in the game. In just one page they recontextualize everything about Lizzie. She's not like all the other creatures inside this moon, she's unique. She was created. They didn't exactly know what would happen, but whatever resulted from the experiment, they would try to turn it into a weapon. She was made for the purpose of harming others. She would be shaped for that purpose, and she was born from the suffering of others. All of this was determined before she drew her first breath. Also, you need to consider that Lizzie herself is as smart and as conscious as humans, to my understanding at least, to the point where she counts as a person, a sentient, sapient being, born and shaped into a weapon. You know, maybe I should watch Alien Resurrection. You know, when I said we were going into the guts of the moon, I didn't think it would be so literal. Yep, walls of flesh. There are a few clipboards I deliberately didn't bring up, and they talk about this. As you head into level C, the rocks of the cave give way to flesh and guts. The worms inside Terry come from this area. Arriving at C2, it seems that things are only getting worse. Okay, but can I stop for a moment to appreciate Alice's voice acting in this part? She's such a silly girl when the orange text takes over.
Gabby? Baby? Are you almost here?
All happy and giddy. It tickles my empathy and makes me feel joyous.
Yippee!
But within this context, it equally fills me with dread, because you know, capital K, that there's something very wrong going on with her, that something is influencing her. Wonderful job, Taylor. Glazing aside, there is a bit of lore in the form of a trans flag, which is actually funny, considering that in Greek mythology, Ganymede is a guy, but here, Ganymede is often referred to as she. Now, your instincts might tell you to head to C1 as fast as this rusty old PH will let you, but I had a different plan. C2 to C3 is a difficult challenge, especially because it combines Lizzie, Boulder Boy, and a 4 to 6 second spawn timer. But I assure you, it is a worthy detour, both for the lore and for the practice. This level, in my opinion, is the best example of the learning curve of the game. By this point, you've more or less built up a routine, and more or less have an idea of what to do when the skeleton decides to throw all your plans in the bin. So the game puts those skills to the test. The game gives you plenty of opportunities to learn, without it falling into a repetitive loop. It never gets to the point of dragging off. You're constantly engaged, even in the moments where nothing happens. And once you manage it, you arrive at C3. In this station, there are a couple things of note. There's also a note from the shareholders, but those guys are all farts and nobody cares about them. And they didn't fund Lisa's enclosure expansion when she needed it, so they should all get mauled by her. They do mention quote-unquote the false womb, however, and call Ganymede a he. You can also find a note from Alice talking about a deeper connection to Ganymede, but most importantly, there's a generator behind the locked door, which I happen to have the key to. Gabby picks up the generator as if it was nothing. Either that or it gets teleported. Oh my god, Gabby's dead body! Yeah, originally there was gonna be a cutscene here. Moving on, C3, C2 is completely uneventful. Nothing attacks you. No Terry, no Lizzie, just you, the elevator, and the mysterious noises from the depths of the moon. I think this section exemplifies how the game does tension. Every second where nothing happens increases the feeling that something might happen in the next one. The entire way you stay prepared, watching every corner to see if anything comes, jumping at every fucking sound. Which makes it all the more relieving when you finally reach C2. Speaking of, once you reach C2, you embark on your way to C1, and it is hard. It's the final challenge, so naturally it's the most difficult one. I spent over 2 hours trying to beat it. I spent more time on C2, C1 than I spent on the entire rest of the game. At first, most deaths came from my mistakes, but as I got better with my strategy, I would end up running into more and more seemingly unwinnable situations. A skeleton appears while I'm waiting for Lizzie. I make a flood-like sweep, grab the blue cable and head to the speaker box. Lizzie comes down, so I activate the speaker and immediately grab the pink cable. I spot a Nautilus that just spawned. I make a mental note of it and shot the giant lizard lake. With that done, I return the pink cable to the nav and go crank the generator, before determining it was better to first have the light ready. I do that, sweep, crank the generator once and sweep again, killing a second Nautilus. The skeleton appears, so I decide to sweep and crank a few times, only to be killed by the first Nautilus. I swear, sometimes it feels like there's only one cable. Wait a minute. I'm getting the strangest sense of deja vu. I did it! That's right. The game was preparing you for this from the very beginning. Turns out, the reason why I was struggling so much was because I had grown too reliant on the blue cable. The game was balanced, I just wasn't able to see it. I was blinded by the privilege of having 2 cables at my disposal, and thus I couldn't see the only way to progress forward. And apparently I wasn't alone in this, because the devs had to add a whole new note to remind the players that the pink cable is more than just the emergency Lizzie removal tool. Alright, let's calm down. C2 C1 is probably the most important example of the tight, delicate balance of the game. Once you have all the threads active, the mechanics impede on each other in a way that one cable can't keep up with. But with two cables, they instead complement each other. And once you understand the power of the pink cable, the game rides the line between boredom and frustration, keeping you in a state of flow, perfectly engaged, but just shy of making you anxious in the bad way. Don't get me wrong, it's still difficult, it still requires near perfect gameplay, but it's not unfair, it's a perfect send-off. And once again, it makes it even more relieving when you finally reach the end. Now I was gonna talk about the endings, and I even had an amazing line ready for one of them. But I think it's better if I leave them for you to reach. Again, the game's free and the link's in the description. Of course, even knowing the endings, there are reasons to play the game, such as, it's fun. But now that I made you curious about them, you'll have a bigger incentive to play the game. And besides, there are things I didn't talk about.
Section C2. Secret area. Bring a portable generator. This game is not linear.
Or the docks. I will say though, the endings do give us some new information. There are implications about the nature of Ganymede, things that we knew are recontextualized, new questions are raised, and we even get to see Alice in the game. But that's something you'll have to see for yourself.
I got 3 hours of sleep.
Overall, Heart of Ganymede is a masterpiece. The gameplay keeps you engaged at all times, whether or not things are happening, while making sure not to plunge you into frustration. The mechanics collide, but it's done in such a way that you can learn not just to deal with it, but to master them all. The sound design is impressive, elevating the tension factor to insane degrees, without the noises being too oppressive or overstaying their welcome. The voice acting is sublime, perfectly capturing the personalities of both characters. I mentioned Alice earlier, but Gavi's voice acting is equally impressive. You can hear the concern she feels for her wife. You can sense how much she fears for Alice and her well-being. Props to Johnny Hansen for her work. The visual composition gives you just enough information to work with, but not enough to feel safe. The lore is engaging, leaving you with plenty of questions, both about the story and about its significance as a work of art. The humans look amazing, they have an incredibly fitting aesthetic. The wolves fall in right line, where they're terrifying when they attack you, but cute when they're friendly. Well, except for Terry. Terry's just an asshole. But I digress. Every aspect manages to strike the highest point of balance between too little and too much. I love this game, and I heavily recommend you play it. As long as you remember to use a pink cable, you will not regret a single moment of it. And once you finish it, let me know your thoughts in the comments. This kind of video is new for me. I've tried to make stuff like this before, but it never quite worked out. So if you want to see more game related stuff, whether it be reviews, analysis, theories, gameplay, or even game development, make sure to like and subscribe. That lets me know you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and with that, until next time.